Okay, right, so this dream I'm going to call Four Corners. Now, the reason I was going to, well, I'd already written it down as Four Corners when I first put it in here, and actually I think even when I put it in my phone straight after it, I called it Four Corners. But actually it linked in to something where I kind of left things on the previous video, where I was talking about, it was Peter when he gets a vision and he sees food coming down on a sheet, the four corners of the sheet. And I mentioned that when I was reading up about general sort of thoughts, I can't remember if that was from my study Bible, to be fair, or whether it's something I found online, but they were making connections and saying that the four corners of this sheet potentially represented the four corners of the world, therefore the world as a whole, that kind of thing. I think it was something like that, but it made me think of this dream, which is talking about four corners as well, which and represented something similar on overall meaning. But again, I'll go through that when we get through the meaning. So there's actually four dreams here. So this may well be a little bit of a longer dream. It doesn't make sense for me to really split these up because a lot of them do kind of continue, but it is quite a bit of material to cover off. So we'll get started. So how this one started was me being in a dream, in a school environment, that kind of educational environment is what I would say. But it was all mainly adults in this, rather than it being children that were filling the classrooms. It was more older students, I would say. So I was walking from classroom to classroom, and I was basically just crashing these classes. The door was closed, there was a class going on, but I just opened the door and walk in. People kind of like looking at me thinking, what is this guy doing? And I was just trying to find a way out. And I was just trying to find a way out of this school. I was going from classroom to classroom, just finding the door that allows me just to get out. I couldn't seem to find any kind of reception or anything like that, or any of these places along the hallways that seemed to lead me out. So I think I probably started trying just the classrooms, because I know from being, when I was in a school, we quite often had a door that would then just open straight out onto the playground or something like that. So I thought, well, maybe some of these classes, if they've got an outside wall, which they probably will have, they'll probably have a door, and then I can get out as long as I'm on the ground floor. So that was my thought process, I believe, anyway. That's certainly how I'm thinking about it now, anyway. So, as I said, I kept crashing these classes and just seeing if I could get out, but most of them didn't actually have a door at all, so I had no way of actually getting out. So I would go in, have a little look around, saw that there wasn't any way to get out, come out of that classroom and then try another. And I was getting really frustrated, because obviously when you're lost, it is very frustrating, isn't it? Trying to make progress and you just can't get anywhere. So I just wasn't understanding also how I got myself in this position in the first place, being in a school and lost. But I remember on my wanderings, I did find a way out into some kind of soft play area. So soft play has come up before. Soft play area has come up at least once, maybe twice. Oh, my phone's going off. Once, maybe twice. That's in season 1. But I can't remember the name of that one. So again, I will cite that in the description. But that's one where there was a soft play area, and we were running the gauntlet sort of thing. We were having to run through these things that were closing in. It was soft play, but people were dying doing it. So it's pretty extreme stakes, but soft play again. So I'm not sure specifically what that may mean, but generally soft play, you think of children, don't you? A safe area for them to play in. But yeah, I came out onto this, so I actually managed to get out through one of these doors and found a soft play area. Yeah, that's reminded me of another one. Season 1, which is Demon Theme Park. That one, I'm constantly wandering around a building trying to find a door that allows me to get out. And a lot of them, I walk into these rooms and there's like a door, but it doesn't actually open. And there's one that finally does, and I escape. So that's an interesting, again, I'm just thinking these up as I'm going. I've already read this over this morning, but I prayed just before, obviously shooting this video, and now these things are coming into mind that didn't come into mind before. Interesting. Okay, so kids play area, right? So yeah, so this soft play area that I come out into seems to be an area for kids. but it also has lots of parents as well. So this is like, it's not part, well, it's obviously part of the school, isn't it? But because I've just come straight out onto it. But the school seems to be filled with more adults rather than kids. So it's not like they're kids from that school that are going out to the soft play area and parents helping. Again, that wouldn't make sense anyway, would it? But this is just how it was. I was still using this area as a pass-through area. I knew I hadn't reached my destination. And it's just fully to get out of this complex. I felt like I needed just to get out of this whole educational complex. And I remember I appeared to have at some point just given up. I was just, I guess, exhausted from all this, just trying to escape sort of thing. And I was sat down just moping. I put here complaining to one of the parents who was next to me, and I was just complaining, saying that I was lost. I knew I could get out of this area, but where did I need to go to next? I was just felt like I was in this area and I just didn't know where to go from here. So I moved on from the soft play area and onto some grass, but the ground was actually really, really rough. And I remember there being lots of sharp things embedded within the ground. And these are things like, it was poorly maintained ground. And these sharp things were things like screws, sharp twigs, all sorts sticking up and things like that. So I was kind of very, very aware that I needed to watch my step as I was going. And so I was being very careful as to where I was putting my feet. This is when I realized that I'd lost my right shoe, specifically my right shoe. Okay, now I write down things like that because sometimes I think left or right can be relevant. So if you watched my surgery series, I talk about a left eye, and then another one is my right eye, and it's a surgery. And I'm kind of thinking, what's the relevance of left and right? But I write it down again here, so it's my right shoe. And that foot was actually barefoot, whereas the other one I have shoes and socks and stuff on. So now, not only was I being cautious, but also I was very embarrassed the fact that I'd actually lost my shoe. Walking around with one shoe is pretty embarrassing, isn't it? And I think that this is when I potentially realised my socks. I realised the sock pattern, which was that they were cream socks with a kind of darkish green stripe on them. Didn't quite know how to describe the colour of the green, but I went with a dark green sort of stripe. Now, I mentioned here that we do actually have those specific socks. They're kind of like sports socks that one of my kids has, which is also cream with green stripes. So whether this has relevance or not, I don't know. But I put it in there because I remember it. I noticed that the area that I was walking in, there was actually ongoing construction work. Okay, so there was people all standing around this area, which I couldn't tell whether they were concerned about the work, as in there's lots of builders maybe that are just sort of down tools and they aren't working. So I'm not sure whether all these people, that were sort of standing around were concerned about the work or trying to somehow slow the progress down of the builders. So maybe it was almost like a protest, of somebody building and then they're maybe trying to slow the progress down, or maybe it's just stalling anyway. I'm not really sure. At this point, I sat down again to wonder, what to do about this missing shoe. Do I go back and try and find out where this shoe is, or do I just press on, really? And I was sort of pondering where I could have potentially lost this shoe. And I deduced here it was probably in the soft play area. That was because I didn't realize at any time before then, when I was walking all around these classes, that I'd lost a shoe. So given that I'd just come from the soft play area and then I'm moving on to this area which is next, which is this grass and kind of mud and sharp things and stuff in it, that maybe that's potentially where I lost it. So I know that the shoe I was wearing, I don't think, maybe this was relevant. So it's a very high-sided walled shoe. So the kind of ones that kind of go up past your ankles. I don't know what kind of shoe you would call that really, but I call it it's just a high-sided sort of shoe. And again, my daughter happens to have some shoes just like that, white and grey in colour. And I can't remember if they were the same shoes, but they were very, very similar, high-sided shoes. I remember, anyway, speaking with someone in which I told them the previous night that I had a dream. Almost like I had a premonition. Yeah, almost like I had a premonition that I was going to lose my shoe, and I'd actually dreamt this. So I was speaking to somebody saying, I had a dream, the previous night, I'd actually dreamt this happening, and now it's happening. This is weird, that I lost my shoe. I dreamt of walking around lost, and that I'd lost my shoe as well. Now, the person I was actually speaking to about this was somebody who's been in a previous dream, and he was a very, very, very random personality. So he's a celebrity, a UK celebrity, not a worldwide celebrity, and he was in it. Now, in that particular dream, he let's say, personified. I think, based on my interpretation, he personified the UK, Britain, along with some other people. There was 2 other British people that are in it, and then there was Donald Trump, who I believe was representing the UK. So the UK, the US. There's an interaction between the 2. I have to find out. Oh, that one's called. Yeah, I've written that down. It's called UK and USA relationship trouble. Interestingly, that was all. That again, we've had a lot of relationship problems, haven't we? From obviously the UK not getting involved with all the stuff that's going on with Iran at the moment. Obviously, given that we're now in March 2026, so this is obviously stuff that's been going on since the 28th of February, I think it is, and so it's been going on for about coming up to 3 weeks now. And we've not been getting involved. Again, I don't think, for anybody out there, I don't think that's necessarily the thoughts of the British people. It's just, it is what it is. We can't control our politicians. They do what they want to do, which is incredibly frustrating, because I don't think they speak for the people at all, a lot of the time, a massive proportion of the time, in fact. So anyway, moving on past that, in this particular dream, so this particular person, again, I won't mention the name again, but if you watch that one, it's a Philip. His name's Philip. And in this dream, Philip was listening to me talking about the dream I'd had, but I was actually cautious about telling him too much, knowing that he was actually in a dream of mine already. And I was a little bit concerned about pointing him to my channel, my YouTube channel, in this dream, in case he had a problem with how I depicted him in the actual dream. I mean, the dream was a dream. I mean, I can't control what I'm dreaming about. It's just I vocalized it, I guess, in a dream, in a video. But again, I don't think it was just that he was. It's all about with dreams, I would have said. It's, when you get a dream, it's how you view a certain person. It's not necessarily who they are. It's just how do you view it. Like, I've had stuff where I've known what I'm associating with somebody is incorrect, but I've made the association. So it doesn't really matter that it's incorrect, because of my brain has made the association. So what I would say is, if God has basically pointed you, let's say, to a certain thing to allow you to make a connection, it doesn't matter that is maybe incorrect in some way, because the key point was making the connection which you've made. So I would have said that happens in my dreams as well. So again, that's what happened in that dream. And the weird thing about that dream is that it did involve Tyson Fury in that previous dream that I just mentioned, that UK-USA relationship trouble. And again, I only just realized that I did a dream in the last, I think it was yesterday, it might be the day before, which had Tyson Fury in it again. So although this didn't say that it had Tyson Fury in it, because it didn't in this dream, it still allowed me to make that connection of, oh yeah, that's weird, because Tyson Fury was in that dream that's got this Philip in it. And I only filmed that like yesterday. Weird little connection that came up. Anyway, so I was worried about his view on my dream, the video I filmed that had him in it. Anyway, I was aware in the dream that he was probably only just trying to convey a message, and I explained that basically in that video. So what I'm saying here is what I've literally just said. So I'm not having this conversation with him, because, as I said, I don't want to draw his attention to my video, just in case he takes it very negatively. But again, it wasn't about that. It was just about understanding certain attributes that I associate with him. It doesn't mean that I'm saying that they're true, if that makes sense. Anyway, I mentioned how some of my dreams have come true. and he was very friendly. He was very, very helpful. Okay, so that's the end of that dream. I'm just going to pause for one moment, okay, and then we'll go into the second dream. Okay, so dream two. Okay, dream two then. So another part of the dream was where I was, again, wandering around. So I'm wandering around an area, and I think I put here, I think that I've maybe just left a church, maybe. This was at some point during the day, during the day slash week, rather than on a Sunday. So I do just go to church on a Sunday. I don't go midweek or anything like that, unless it's some sort of a meeting, church members meeting, something like that. But other than that, I wouldn't. Anyway, I was walking around this big open area, and it was all sort of pedestrianised, so it's all paved over, no cars around, nothing like that. And there was 4 buildings that were in a circular pattern. So they weren't specifically organised in one in front and one directly behind, and then one to the right and one directly to the left. It wasn't quite like that. I did say it's north, south, east, west was the general orientation, but they weren't quite, that organised. That it was just that there was 4 buildings, you see, in this kind of north, south, east, west kind of organisation. One of them was definitely a cathedral. And another had a kind of a temple sort of vibe to it, maybe. One I thought maybe was Masonic or something like that. It wasn't really something that I recognised as far as the symbol, let's say. I didn't recognise the symbol that was on it. It was something like that. The fourth one, I don't remember necessarily seeing that. I seem to remember actually seeing it through a fog. Not that I wrote that down, but I seem to remember seeing it all through a bit of a very light fog where I can see all the buildings, and I'm just sort of wandering around this big, if you imagine it's like a big open courtyard sort of area that's all paved, and you're just walking from one building to another. A little bit like that. Similar to that. I ended up walking towards the cathedral, and I remember I was helping. So I walked into this building, and then I started to notice it was very, very dusty. Very, very dusty. So what I was doing was I was kind of like blowing dust off the rafters and, hoovering it all up, getting rid of all the dust. And then I noticed that also that there was wooden floorboards that actually had gaps in them. So as in the boards aren't quite meeting, on the floor. That's the part actually I've had in another dream. Very bizarre element that is, isn't it? Holes, gaps in floorboards. Very strange. So this had gaps in the floorboards, and I was complaining that they needed to be replaced. Okay, so needed to be replaced. So I remember at some point seeing my own pastor there. His name is also Philip. Okay, so Philip from the first dream, Philip in the second dream. And he also had I can only assume, a twin brother who was also a pastor at the very same church, it looked like. And they looked really incredibly similar. We had a chat with who I thought had been Philip, but it actually turned out to be his brother, which was confusing. And they both had... they changed preaching sessions. So it was basically like I'd been going to a certain service, and then he wasn't at that service. It was his brother who was doing that time, and he had moved to another service time, I guess, is what it looked like, potentially. Oh, okay, that's it. Dream two. Okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll go on to dream 3. So I then jumped into another part where I was at a sort of shopping area. It felt like one of these. It felt really. I put here. This one then feels a bit disconnected from the first two dreams. I was in a clothing sort of store, I think, which felt pretty open. In that I was in a clothing store, I think, which felt pretty open, and I was talking with a young woman who was sitting face to face on chairs. Yeah, very, very strange. So she was looking. She was holding both my hands and wanting to paint my nails. So I was sitting down. If you imagine, like a very small table, chair. One so we're facing each other, and she's like grabbed my hands and she wants to paint my nails. I felt like, and yeah, I felt that she put nail polish on maybe just a couple of nails on my left hand, and then I think one nail was black, and then the other one that she was started to work on was now covered in, it was gold, specifically like it was like a gold dust. It may have been yellow dust, but it was like that gold sort of color. She was indicating to me for me to present my hands in a certain way, and I wrote down here is, oh, I don't even need to do it. It's a video, so I'll show you. She wanted me to do that with my fingernails, and I was felt a bit emasculated, let's say, and I was just sort of saying, it felt like she was actually asking me in a way to kind of mock me, if you see what I mean. It was like, it's not really necessary, is it? I mean, you've got my hands out in front of you right now. Why do you need me to do that? Is what it felt like. Anyway, I felt a bit mocky, and she was doing it out of her own amusement. And I think she did actually sort of giggle a little bit. So I thought, well, there you go. I did think you were doing it out of your own amusement. And I said something, when she asked me to do that, I said something along the lines of, nope, I am not going to be doing that. And I was like, are we done here? Like, can I go now? Are we done? Because I just wasn't interested after that point. Yeah, that was my sort of reaction. Yeah, there you go. And she started to giggle, knowing that I felt that that she'd sort of insulted me in some way, and I felt, as I said, emasculated in what she'd asked me to do, because I was very self-conscious, basically. So oddly, she then leaned in to put her cheek against my own, and she had some of this gold dust. So this gold dust she was putting on my nail, she had some all on her cheek. So when she leaned in, she put her cheek against my face, let's say, and it transferred some of that gold dust, let's say, across to my face. And I had the feeling that I had the feeling she wanted to kiss me. She was very, very flirty. And so I straight away sort of backed off a bit. And she looked, so as far as because I do mention this quite a lot, because I think sometimes it can be relevant, is I mentioned that she looked sort of Asian, Southeast Asia, that sort of area of the world. And I actually asked her, I said, are you Korean by any chance? I just asked her whether she was Korean, which I actually think she was. Yeah, and there's a little bit of a connection there with my youngest daughter. She absolutely loves Korean pop. It's Korean this, Korean that. So I'm not surprised that kind of somehow made its way maybe into my dreams. But that's why I think I specifically said Korean, you see, because she's talking about it all the time. The scene then changed anyway to me being at a big gathering where I noticed that there was two sets of people. Yeah, there you go. So this is where it's relevant. So one set were white and the other looked maybe Korean. So it looked very similar to how she looked. And it made me, it felt like a meeting between the two families, let's say. And I don't know, I'm not sure what it was meant to signify, as I wondered whether, while actually in the dream, whether it was meant to signify that, two families coming together, maybe that this is a marriage scenario or something, possibly, was what I was thinking. But actually it felt a little bit more somber. It was almost like it was less of a celebration like a wedding, but a little bit more, and also at the same time, not a funeral. It was sort of like something in between. And I put here, it could have been that there was some sort of a scandal that happened, and people were wearing grey and black rather than any kind of happy colours, wedding kind of colours. It was very much like that. And again, I was kind of like, don't know what that really means. I seem to remember, not that I wrote this down, but I seem to remember all like black umbrellas and stuff like that. But yeah, all that kind of stuff. So dream 4. So I'm not sure where this one fits into any of these dreams, but maybe midway or towards the beginning I've put here. I'm not really sure where this kind of fits in. But I was at a large hall area with lots and lots of tables, and we're all sat down at tables to have some food together. This was not where you're waited upon, so it wasn't like a restaurant where you're waiting for a waiter to come over and take your order or anything like that. It wasn't that kind of scenario at all. It was very much more like a help yourself kind of, like a buffet sort of thing, but I put here more like a party food sort of thing, chicken nuggets and cold meats and all of that kind of finger food, let's say. So again, it felt like an organised event rather than being at a venue like a restaurant. So it didn't feel like I'd gone to a all-you-can-eat Chinese restaurant, as an example. It didn't feel like that. It felt like more like a party or a wedding or an event of some kind where all the food had been laid on, and they sort of say, right, everybody, go get your food, and you just grab your plate and off you go. It was very much like that. So more party food, more cold, generally sort of cold bits of food, chicken wings, all that sort of stuff. I don't know what triggered this, but my mum actually said to me that one of the girls was interested in me, in that she liked me sort of thing. And this was a bit of a shock to me in the dream. But of course, given the Korean girl bit, I think it came up after this one. So I think that maybe this dream could have been before that one I just talked about, the Korean girl in the shop. I'm not sure. But I remember being aware in the dream that this was the second time a girl had been interested in me, and I didn't know why. I had no idea why. I hadn't actually encouraged it in any way. It just sort of happened. It was very much one way. So I'm just going to pause for a second because I'm going to cough. So I'm going to pause it for a second. Then we'll go into transparency, where I'm looking to see if there's anything that could have affected the dream. Then I'm going to go on to all the meaning, which goes on for quite a while. To be honest, there's quite a lot of dream here to unpack. Okay. So transparency-wise then, so work. Yeah, okay. So transparency-wise, anything could have affected me in this dream in any way. Well, I did have a dream with somebody called Filippo, and so Phil, let's say. And so this was a call that I'd had, I put here, on a work call yesterday. So that could be why I've had two Phils in my dream. Yeah, it could be. And I don't think it's overly relevant, actually, the name, too much. I don't think. Okay. And so that could have entered my dreams, given that there was two Phils in the dreams. Feeling lost. Well, that night before, I had actually also feeling lost. Well, the night before, I had also had a dream about being lost. And so I think also I was concerned about my phone battery running out because I was using it for navigation. And I had many lost dreams the previous night, and actually woke up feeling actually really downhearted of the barrage, really, of lost dreams, being lost. And actually kind of spilled over, that saying, to my actual life, where I had a whole night of feeling lost. And so I came out of it actually feeling really lost in reality. And I've got here, written here, I'm very, very often lost in my dreams. Lost in London, lost in Birmingham. I've never been, or have I? Have I ever been to Birmingham? I have been to Birmingham once. Very, very big city in the UK, one of the biggest cities in the UK, outside of London. So I have a lot of dreams that have had signs where it will say Birmingham. I'm like, why? And I'm zooming around on the motorway trying to find Birmingham. I've got no idea why Birmingham. I'm just curious actually about what dreams did I log before. Yeah, what was it? I don't think I even logged it. No, I didn't log it. I didn't log it because it was just I guess it was just one dream after another, just feeling lost. What can you get out of that, really? So, because as I said, I get it so frequently. So what are my thoughts? So my thoughts then on part one. So part one, if you remember, was the one where that was the big long one, wasn't it? Yeah, sorry, dream one. So that was the one when I was walking through the school and there was lots of sharp things, and I had a chat with Phil, talking about my dreams and stuff like that. Anyway, okay. So I think that there's several key points here that make up the whole message. So the lost in education, in an educational environment, losing a shoe, ground being sharp ahead, construction halted, and the Phil is at the end. So this is how it kind of reads to me. So this might sound a bit disjointed actually, the way I've done this, but what I've done is I've used my dream book, This is one I've mentioned many times, Divinity Code. And I've broken down school, shoes off. What does right mean? What does the colours mean? What do all these things mean? Just so you can see how you can kind of pick little things out here, and then you can find a course, let's say, as to where you think the general dream is kind of directing you. As I've said to you, said many times before as well, I don't just go with what it says and that's it. Not at all. I'll kind of take that under advisement, let's say, and it's like, yeah, okay, but what do I get as the overall feeling? Because I would have said there's quite a few times where I've actually looked at all of the meanings and gone, I really think it means this, and I've just gone with that. I've just gone with what my feeling is as to what I feel it's worth, relating to, not specifically what the dream book is. So as I said, it's a tool, it's how you use it, okay? So school. So what could school mean? So it says here, I'm just going to reel them off. So it says, a place of teaching or learning. It can represent a church. It can represent a Bible college. It can represent discipleship. What can having your shoes off mean? What can that mean? So it can mean holy ground, God's presence. Now, I've had shoes off before, so I have mentioned about holy ground and felt that that's possibly what it could mean before. So I've put shoes off, can mean holy ground. It can mean God's presence. It can mean that you're simply not prepared. That you're. It can mean communication. It can mean affecting your work for God. Walking in the flesh can mean disgraced. Can mean testimony or enslaved. So quite varied there. What does the right mean? So like your right hand and stuff like that. So again, it's quite significant really in the Bible. So right tends to represent strength, faith, spirit, or blessed or righteous direction. Can mean mouth, preferred, as in you're a preferred person in that you get a double portion. This more comes down to the hand when that's relating to Genesis, I believe that one. Authority, longevity, a contentious woman can mean wisdom as well. So again, massively varied. Again, you're using it as a course. Does that match up? Does that match up with the next one? Does it match up with the next one? Does it match up with the next one? And you can see a course potentially that's coming through. Classroom can mean the heart. It can mean a teachable heart, a place of training, equipped and preparation, a place of being equipped and preparation. What does a builder mean? Because obviously I had a construction site that was going on and that was halted. A builder, I've put, my summary would be, I think, is construction halted is meaning that my progress, let's say, just beyond the classroom has been halted. Okay, so that's what I think it could be talking about there. Then we go to the socks. So I had cream colour. So cream colour can mean false holiness or self-righteousness. A green colour can mean righteousness. It can mean envy, peace, being hypocritical, prosperous, productive. Can mean life. Can mean growth. It can mean being zealous. Can mean youth, joy, faithful, fruitful, work of the flesh or working for yourself. Flesh, of course. Wickedness, idolatry. It can mean earth. It can mean mercy. If it's an olive green, it was very similar to an olive green. It can mean anointing or anointed one. It can mean resurrection. So 21 meanings there. So where do you go with that? It's quite a lot. So in summarizing, it could mean something along the lines of this. But I need to stay in the classroom because obviously I'm trying to escape this classroom. Maybe I need to spend a bit more time in the classroom. Yeah. So what did the classroom mean again? Well, it was kind of a place of learning, wasn't it? A spiritual learning, let's say, of that kind of thing. So it could be talking about that. I need to spend more time in the classroom rather than trying to escape, rather than walking off, trying to get out of there. That I have more learning to do, more training to do. This being the classroom, obviously, aspect. That also it's interesting that there were adults as well, because obviously if it was maybe it's like a higher learning. I'm meant to be staying in that sort of area, something like that. I've passed beyond the early stage schooling, let's say, as being understanding the basics of the Bible, and I'm moving on to a higher level here. But I'm even looking to try and escape that high level. Maybe that's what they're saying. Again, that maybe I lack wisdom. So that was a bit to do with the right hand sort of bit. Maybe I'm lacking wisdom because I've lost my right shoe, and that I'm not fully prepared because that's the shoe aspect. And if you don't have all your shoes on, then you're not fully equipped for your walk, are you? So maybe that's what it's talking about. So I'm lacking wisdom. I'm not fully prepared, which could be the shoe aspect. I put regarding the socks that maybe I have a false holiness, a self-righteousness, or with an aspect of righteousness in that there's the green, but a lot of it's cream, let's say. Even that there's an anointing on my life, but it's only very partially active. I'm not. It's that kind of thing. Again, whether the socks were just something that's literally we've got those pairs of socks at home, whether that's just something we can disregard or not, I don't know. I mean, again, even if it's scathing against me, I'll still include it because I don't want to shy away from any kind of what's the word? Discipline, let's say, reproving against me, because it specifically says that in the Bible that God disciplines those that He loves. So if I do have negative stuff, I still include it because we're not all perfect. And what was I going to put? I'll put that scripture in. I'll find that one. So that's why I'm writing and going a little bit quiet. I'm just writing that down. So that's my general overall look there. I actually looked up to see what socks meant. So socks, it says here, we'll start with the first one. So little things that affect your walk. It's a daily choice. It may speak of past or future walks. Things that are held close to you, so they're personal. Maybe clothing your feet to determine your path. So again, I thought that was quite an interesting one, because if I'm clothing my foot, which is the one that's directing my path, what am I clothing it in? Well, according to this, I'm clothing it in false righteousness, let's say. Did I say that? False righteousness? I think it was that. Was it cream? Cream was false holiness or self-righteousness. I've certainly been guilty of that to a certain extent, So, where's it gone? So if you're clothing your feet in the wrong attributes, let's say, then your path is going to be off. So I think that's what that could be talking about. And again, socks talks about preparation. Well, again, we've already talked about preparation, haven't we? And a lack of preparation in not having shoes on. Walking in the flesh, if you've got no socks. I did have one. It can mean that you're unprepared. Yeah. It says, if you have no socks at all, unprepared. Well, I did have one that I didn't have a sock. I didn't have a shoe. I didn't have a sock. So I was barefoot on one of my feet. So unprepared. Yeah. So again, same as the shoe aspect. Disorderly, if you had odd socks, can mean the gospel, can mean the old way of doing things if you're wearing old socks, which I wasn't wearing old socks, but disorderly is odd socks. So like one green, one red, I don't know, something like that. So I think, the lack of a right sock is me being maybe unprepared and lacking in wisdom, maybe. With the stopped building work, as meaning the work of the future maybe has been stalled. Maybe there was plans that have been, put together, obviously for me, like all of us, and that construction has stopped, has halted, maybe because I need to get back in that classroom. Yeah, is what I'm thinking. That's how I'm kind of working all of this out as to potentially what the message is. And that if I was to press ahead, that ground was littered, wasn't it, with obstacles. I'm trying to work around all these screws and these twigs and things that if I've got bare feet will be a problem. If I'm wearing shoes, then that won't be a problem for me. So I need to be prepared. Do you see where I'm going with this? So I think potentially this is quite a big message, unless it's all just nothing, which is always potentially the way with any kind of dreams. And I do say that in prayers before. A lot of the times I film these dreams is, if this dream wasn't from you, God, and I've somehow thought that this was worthy of filming and it's nothing to do with you, I pray that you would still get the glory out of it, that you would still direct that video, and you would still use the aspects of that dream to gain glory from it. So even when these dreams potentially could mean different things, it's still hopefully we're still getting to what God would use that dream for. Hopefully that makes sense. So there we go. Yes, I'm talking about future construction stalled, and the ground ahead can be littered with painful obstacles if I'm not equipped with shoes and socks on. The school aspect can also represent discipleship, which is actually something that our church has been calling out for us, and who wants to be a disciple, that kind of thing, and to be discipled. And so maybe I should go to that class, maybe. And a school can also represent the church, of course. So I am clearly saying here, I am not the finished article. I'm not the finished package. And I need to prepare myself for times to come and think about obviously my learning, obviously being stalled. And this is actually, I do watch a mixture of things. So maybe I need to concentrate back onto the biblical stuff, spend more time in the Bible, which I would say we all need to do. Okay, dream 2 then. So dream 2, just to refresh you on that. So that was the one where we had the 4 corners. Yeah, so the 4 different buildings. One of them was certainly a cathedral that I went into, and there were some others, and I felt that they all represented religious buildings. Okay, so they're all in a circular pattern as well. So I mentioned they're all in like a compass, north, south, east, west. What does that represent? Well, a compass really represents, doesn't it, the earth, north, south, east, west, and it was circular. It was in a circular pattern. Again, the earth. I felt like that's what it was talking about, which is why I've called it 4 corners, like the 4 corners of the earth, of course. Yeah. So that's what I think it's talking about here. And this is talking about world religion, really. So I put here, the fact that there was at least 1 or 2 of those buildings that were religious buildings, I think it's clearly talking about world religion. And the cathedral representing Christianity, which was the building that I went to. There was this other one that was maybe Masonic. I mean, it had a symbol on it, but I didn't recognize the symbol. So it could have been other world religions. I'm just not aware of the symbols. But that's represent. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I looked up world religions. Actually, I was just curious because I had four buildings. I thought, what's the top 4? What are the top 4 religions of the world? Christianity is in number 1. So that's according to when I Googled this. Okay. So it was 2.4 to 2.5 billion people identify as being Christian. You've got 1.9 to 2 billion that identify as Muslim, Islam. You have third place listed as Hinduism, which is 1.2 billion, and Buddhism, which is 500 to 530 million. Okay. However, suggested is counting the agnostic atheists. So as a group, agnostic and atheists, 450 to 500 million. But if you rolled in those that are called, that would consider themselves to be unaffiliated, that's actually 1.9 billion people who do not consider themselves to be any religion of any kind whatsoever. So 1.9 billion. So that put them in pretty much joint second place, really, with Islam. So that was quite interesting. So maybe one of those just represented just like an earthly, a non-religion, completely, because that would put it in third place. Again, joint first, second, third place. The fact that obviously I walked into a cathedral that represented Christianity, I don't necessarily think that means specifically Roman Catholic, because it being a cathedral, I looked to clean the dust off. That I thought was interesting. So cleaning can represent, again, this is me looking this up, cleaning can represent confession and repentance or fasting. And dusting, so actually dusting, can represent being human, in that we're made of dust, can represent death, and others as well, but they didn't really fit. So yeah, potentially, maybe it's saying the church needs to repent, something like that. I'm not sure. Maybe the church needs to clean itself up. The other interesting part was the floorboards, which had gaps in them, which can mean a fleshly person, someone who's not godly, apparently. Okay, that the foundation is of wood and not stone, which would be Christ, of course, and wood burns up like straw, unlike gold, silver, and other material. So maybe gaps in the foundation. So it could mean that. So because the floorboards can be seen as the foundation. So rather than like a concrete or a stone floor, it wasn't. It was wooden floorboards, and there was gaps in those floorboards. So is it saying something around the foundation's not right? Foundation's built on wood and not on stone. Again, whether that's talking about me personally or whether that's talking about the church in general, I'm not sure. It's talking about world religions, so I would say it's probably more generalized than specific to me. But another one I do have, I think, is maybe more directed potentially at me. Dream 3. So fingernails. So dream 3. So again, I was in that kind of shop environment where I'm getting I have got no idea why I'm getting my nails painted by this girl, this woman that's in the in this clothes shop sort of place. So what can fingernails mean? Can mean female conflict, womanhood, if your nails are being painted. That's not good, is it? Preparing to make an advance can mean being flirting, can be disarming conflict. If you're cutting nails, it can mean that. If it's black in colour, well, there was black and there was gold, wasn't there? So black, I think, as there are so many meanings to black, it could just be, I've put on here, it could mean like a before and an after, as one was black and one was gold. So it could mean death for black, to gold, which could then mean holy and glory. Yeah, so glorious. So like a death, and then from there you've got glory. Can obviously you've also got black, which can mean the black horse of famine. Obviously I've put that in videos before. So yeah. I don't know if I want to mention the video it's in, because then it kind of ruins the ending to it. So I'll leave that. It can mean famine, the black horse, and to wealth, obviously, for gold as well. But it was interesting how she came in close and then she rubbed her face, and then the gold came off onto me. And that made me think of something completely different. So that made me think of Moses, where he has a veil over his face when he comes down from receiving the commandments, because of his face was glowing, wasn't it, from being in the presence of God. Okay, so it made me think of Moses having the veil over his face, due to the glowing from that. So because I've associated just there gold with potentially glory, that kind of thing. I was like, glory? Well, that was rubbed off my face. That makes me think of Moses. Yeah, so that's where I'm kind of going with all these different things. Also, the way that the hands were held also made me think a little bit like a palm reader or something like that. So could it indicate future life, death, something like that? I don't know. The concern was me backing away, but this was from her advances also, because obviously she's coming in and I'm saying that she's feeling quite flirty, and I'm backing off obviously because of this kind of advance. Then that makes me think of Babylon. Makes me think of Babylon because of she's called the, what's it called? She's called the, what is it? The prostitute, the harlot that rides a beast. The adulteress, Babylon, basically. So could she represent that in some way? Not sure. I'll go into Dream 4. So Dream 4, if you remember, that was the dinner. Was that the dinner? It was, wasn't it? Dream 4. Dream 4 was the one. Yeah, evening buffet. Yeah. Okay. So Dream 4 then. So, well, food normally represents the word of God. So it can often represent the word of God. Jesus, or the will of God. And what you see are eating. And what you can see is eating can represent whether you're eating solid food or you're still having liquids. Again, weirdly, that linked into my dream I did yesterday, which was food, glorious food. And I was like, how weird. There's so many, and it's got glorious in it as well, isn't it? Yeah, food, glorious food, which I filmed yesterday. And there's all these little connections that came in with this one. I was holding off. We've got the four corners. We've got the, the bits to do with Tyson Fury and all this other stuff that's literally linked in with all of my dreams from the last few days, but they wouldn't have linked in with dreams that I've previously filmed. These all just coming together. But so and I was talking in that about food, eating solid food. I was actually talking about drinking a milkshake, but it was a super, super thick milkshake. And I actually ditched the milkshake and moved on to food. And that was like me, I think, saying, because it talks about in scriptures how, we, rather than having milk, which is meant to represent like a baby, isn't it? Like I say, an early stage Christian, that you're then moving on to solid food, which is when you're ready then for the deeper stuff, and you're more established, let's say, and you move on to food, don't you? So that's what I felt the meaning was on that food, glorious food. But in this one, so similar to this, in that I'm eating food. I put what was this? I put, there you go. I just said Babylon for Dream 3, and then I looked up woman, a foreign woman, and because obviously I mentioned that she was maybe Southeast Asia, that kind of area. Korean, something like that is kind of how she looked to me. If you look up woman, it says in brackets foreign / ungodly. Well, one of them that comes up is Babylon. And it says that she represents Babylon if she's sexually seductive. Well, she was very, very flirty. And so I was thinking, okay, so maybe she does represent Babylon. So maybe being seduced by the riches of the world, rather than committing myself to God. Maybe that's what it was talking about. But that said, I was rejecting her, wasn't I? She was flirting and I was backing off. So maybe that's showing me backing off from, her advances being the world, riches, all that kind of stuff. Not that I'm a rich person, but we've all got our individual, sort of levels, I suppose, haven't we, as to how much we are consumers and stuff like that. So I'm always I try to be anyway. What's the word? Not going after, big flash, sparkly things, let's say. But I think that's what the overall meaning was. I'm just having a look to see, because I did write some bits and pieces as we went through, just to see if there's anything else. Yeah, so I've already covered it off. So dream one, my notes was that there was a connection there between Tyson Fury and Philip, who was in a previous dream, that UK-USA relationship trouble. And there's a connection because I've literally just done one about Tyson Fury, weirdly. Yeah, okay, I'll mention this. So, I mentioned that there was two fields. There wasn't two fields. There was the church, wasn't there? I can't even remember what dream that was. Not that it really matters too much. But there was my pastor, and I'd gone and I realised I was talking to his brother, but they looked the same. They were twins. Well, and I also mentioned that he wasn't there for so where I'd expected him to be doing the service, it was actually his brother doing the service, and they'd sort of swapped around services. Well, that's actually happened. So this was, I didn't actually didn't tell you this, did I? When was this dream? This dream was 1st of the 11th, 2025. This dream actually took place. I'm not sure when we initially started talking about it, actually, but our church has grown so much that actually we can't service the amount of people coming in and wanting to sit down. So people were standing up at the back of the church. So we're in that kind of blessed position where actually what the church, as church members, we decided to do would be to split the service. So rather than just having one service at 10 o'clock, now we have one at 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock, and even kind of like one at 5 o'clock now. So we've got 3 services instead of 1. And so given that there was a twin, it made me think of almost like the pastor sort of splitting himself or creating almost like a double to do 2 services. Because that can sometimes happen where he will do both services rather than just doing the one. It really depends on what kind of cover he's got. Because we have actually got multiple pastors there at the church at the moment, 3 or 4, who can pick these up. So it's not a case of we don't have enough people to do it. And what's amazing actually was when we first started doing this only happened at the beginning of March, by the way, that it actually went into effect was beginning of March. So I'd actually, obviously there was, we had 10 o'clock before, then it went to 9 and 11 instead. So we were always going to change time. I went for the 11. But yeah. But yeah, I lost my train of thought there for a second. So what was interesting was they've reduced the amount of seats just a little bit, but it's completely full. And apparently the 9 o'clock was completely full as well. So we're just seeing this expansion. The reason they did that was because of, apparently there were studies that have been done that said if you find that 80% of your seats are taken up, then people coming in that want to make it their church think, well, they're never going to get a seat, or it's too close, we're too close to capacity. So instead they split the sessions, services even, so that there'll appear to be more seats available, so that it will encourage more people to stay rather than coming in, seeing it's full, and then thinking we'll find a different church, because they want to expand. So yeah, that was an interesting aspect which I didn't mention in the dream book. There was other bits that I didn't realise were actually in the meaning, so I've already covered those off. So yeah, I think that's everything. I think that is everything. So we got to under an hour for 4 dreams. It's not bad going. There's a lot to that, and I hopefully that you found that interesting in the whole process of using that dream book, which I'll put in the description, that helped to bring that whole dream together and for me to understand the meaning, because I was very lost. Genuinely, I was very lost. But once you get those It's a little bit like making a puzzle, isn't it? Once you've got those little corners in, then you can start making the rest of the puzzle. If you don't, and you start somewhere else, then you're never going to be able to easily put that puzzle together. So this was helpful using this dream book, just to get some of these little bits here of like not having shoes on, not having socks on, and stuff like that. Just these little bits. Classroom. I mean, I kind of thought what that could mean, but it just helps to have that confirmed there. And then that sent me in the right direction. Then it all started to come together. I'm like, oh, okay. And I think that this is the genuine meaning, because it feels right to me that as to what that meaning came through as to that being correct for me. World religions, all that kind of stuff. I think that's correct as to what that's talking about. And maybe it's just an interesting point for you to know that Christianity slightly out ahead, but Islam coming up. I've mentioned before, the only real reason that Islam is increasing is birth rate. That's really it. It has the biggest drop-off rate certainly has a much, much bigger drop-off rate than Christianity does, because Christianity is the truth, and everything else is a false religion. Everything else. Okay, that is it. If you haven't already, and you're still, let's say, playing around with Christianity to a certain extent and understanding it, that kind of thing, find any of the videos that says Sinner's Prayer right at the end, and I go through a Sinner's Prayer. It's generally at the end, and that will actually cover off what you need to say, really just to open the door to invite God in. And then you'll find then things start to change, start to happen. As long as you continue reading the Bible and understanding it and stuff like that, you'll find that it opens the door. Okay, it's not the thing that saves you. It's the opening that then brings you to, there we go. I know where I'm going next. Brings you to saving faith. Okay, there you go. This often happens towards the end. There'll be some sort of a summary or something like that, and I realise, yes, I never knew where I was going to put that. I know where I'm going to put it now. Okay, so I think I know what my next stream is going to be, that I'm going to cover off. But that's it for now. Okay, hopefully you found that interesting, and we will move on to the next one.